The wind roared outside like a caged beast, rattling the windows as rain pounded the roof in sheets. But inside, all was warm and cheerful. Candles flickered on the dining room table, casting a soft glow on our Thanksgiving feast. The savory aroma of roasted turkey wafted from the kitchen, mingling with the tang of cranberry sauce and the sweetness of pumpkin pie. I sat laughing with my little sister Jamie, while my elder sister Nancy helped Mom carry in the side dishes. Our grandparents relaxed in the living room, Grandpa cheering on his favorite football team while Grandma knitted a scarf, the click of her needles barely audible over the weather's symphony. We only got to enjoy holidays like this once or twice a year ever since Dad walked out, but Mom always tried to make them special. "Nothing brings a family together like a home-cooked meal," she'd say, and she was right. As we took our seats around the table, I gazed at my family with love and gratitude. We had our struggles, but in this moment, nothing else mattered except being together. Just as I scooped a heaping spoonful of mashed potatoes onto my plate, the doorbell rang out, clear as a gunshot. I froze, my pulse quickening. Who could possibly be visiting in this storm? Now who could that be? Mom murmured. What if it's Dad? Nancy suggested. None of us had seen him in months, not since the divorce. But there was always a chance. Mom's eyes darkened. Marcus, go see who it is, please. I hesitated. Did I really want to face Dad after everything he'd put us through? But the doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Sighing, I stood up. Better to know if the prodigal father had returned. Rain pummeled my face and wine tore at my clothes as I opened the front door. All I could make out was a tall figure in a rain slicker, face obscured by a hood. What do you want? I shouted over the gale. Please, food, hungry, came the faint reply. My shoulders relaxed. Just a hungry traveler, not my deadbeat dad. Wait there, I yelled back. Inside, I hurriedly piled leftovers onto a paper plate. Grandma eyed me approvingly. That's a good boy. No one should go hungry on Thanksgiving. I nodded, warmed by her praise. She'd always had a kind heart. Plate loaded with turkey, potatoes, and stuffing. I headed back outside, Grandma's encouragement bolstering me. But as I unlatched the storm door, the man burst forward, forcing his way inside. I stumbled back in shock. The plate tumbled from my fingers as the man's hood slipped off, revealing not a face weathered from travel, but one creased with malice. This was no wayward pilgrim. I braced my shoulders against the door, just as two more figures emerged from the darkness. My blood turned to ice. Nancy, help! I cried. If they got inside, who knew what they'd do to my fragile old grandparents, or my mother and sisters? Adrenaline flooded my veins. I had to protect my family. With Nancy's aid, I shoved with all my might and slammed the door shut. The lock clicked into place just as the intruders rushed the entrance. Check the back door, I shouted to Nancy. She disappeared while I darted around locking windows. No way was I letting those thugs invade our sanctuary. The next few minutes passed in a blur, calling the police, comforting Grandma and Jamie, peering out windows into the brooding night. No sign of the prowlers. At long last, red and blue lights flashed through the gloom. The police swept the property but found no trace of the trespassers. Though they were gone, the memory of their malignant eyes haunted me. Our family's warmth had nearly been shattered by their chill malice. Later, as we sat around the fire nursing mugs of hot cider, Grandma squeezed my hand. You did good tonight, Mark. You kept your family safe. I managed a shaky smile. She was right. Though the intruders had threatened us, we'd come together and faced the danger as one. The love we shared was the ultimate protection. Now on Thanksgiving, we say an extra prayer for those less fortunate who are alone and hungry. But we also keep the doors locked, for monsters can appear from the darkness even on the most sacred of nights. Golden autumn light filtered into the cozy living room as I lounged on the sofa, watching the parade floats drift across the TV screen. The tantalizing smells of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie drifted from the kitchen, where Mom was hard at work preparing our Thanksgiving feast. I breathed deeply, savoring the comforting scents of the season. It was so good to be home for the holidays, surrounded by family. I hadn't seen my cousins Jess and Lily in months, and Uncle Matt's terrible dad jokes never failed to make me groan. As much as I loved living on my own, nothing compared to gathering together for these cherished traditions. My phone buzzed with an incoming text. Brow furrowed, I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. With a shrug, I opened it, expecting an auto-generated holiday sales pitch. But as I scanned the lengthy message, my stomach dropped. Hey Melissa, hope your Thanksgiving is going well. Kevin. My hands trembled, sending the phone tumbling to the carpet. No, it couldn't be. I'd blocked that psychopath months ago, ever since I'd rejected his increasingly aggressive advances. How had he gotten my number? Footsteps sounded down the hall, followed by Uncle Matt's gravelly voice. Everything okay in there? I snatched up the phone, shoving it into my pocket. Yep, all good, I called out with forced cheer. No need to drag my family into this mess. Uncle Matt's footsteps retreated, and I sagged back against the cushions, pulse racing. I had to figure out how to handle this creep on my own. Ignoring the trembling of my fingers, I typed a terse reply. Stop contacting me. I'll call the police. His obsessive response came within seconds, but I refused to read it, muting my phone instead. I wouldn't let him sabotage this cherished holiday. Plastering a smile on my face, I went to join my family. Laughing with my cousins as we set the table, I tried to forget about the stalker's message burning a hole in my pocket. But I couldn't fully relax, constantly glancing toward the windows as if expecting to see his face leering through the glass. Finally, the big turkey was carved, and our plates were laden with sides. As we joined hands for the blessing, I silently prayed that the rest of the night would remain peaceful. No such luck. As conversation ebbed after the satisfying meal, I snuck off to the bathroom to check my phone. 3 more lengthy, disturbing texts from unknown numbers. The latest said, "You can't hide from me, Melissa. I'll always find you." My hands shook with anger and fear. This couldn't go on. Kevin's obsessive delusions were escalating. If I didn't take action, who knew what he was capable of? Decision made, I marched to the living room on trembling legs. Mom, Dad, everyone, I need your help. Their faces paled as I described the stalking, harassment, and thinly veiled threats. By the time I finished, Mom's jaw was clenched, an ominous glint in her eye. That does it. We're going to the police first thing tomorrow morning. I exhaled in relief. With my family's support, maybe this nightmare could finally end. After heartfelt goodbyes, I drove across town to my cozy apartment. My roommate Chelsea was spending Thanksgiving with her parents, so I was on my own tonight. After double-checking the lock on the front door, I changed into pajamas and curled up in bed with a cheesy holiday rom-com. The movie was just reaching its feel-good climax when I heard footsteps creaking down the hall. I paused the TV, listening closely. Chelsea must be home early. "Chelsea!" I called out. No response. Just more footsteps approaching my bedroom, followed by the doorknob slowly rattling. Icy tendrils of fear curled down my spine. Chelsea always knocked before entering my room. She would never just randomly try to get in. Grabbing my phone with shaking hands, I peered under the door. All I could see were shadowy feet blocking the hall light. Heart in my throat, I fired off a frantic text to Chelsea. "Are you home right now?" Her bewildered reply came instantly. "No, stayed at my parents' tonight." "Why?" The feet retreated down the hall, moving toward the living room. Whoever was in my apartment clearly wasn't Chelsea, which left only one horrible possibility. Somehow that psychotic creep had gotten inside. I stifled a shriek, frantically calling my dad. He picked up on the first ring, concern etched in his voice. In hushed whispers, I explained the situation. "Stay put," he urged. "I'm on my way." The next 5 minutes were the longest of my life. With shaking hands, I searched for a weapon, finally grabbing a heavy sculpture off my dresser. Curled up on the bed covers, eyes glued to the barricaded door, I prayed my dad would arrive before the intruder could find a way inside. At last I heard the front door bang open, followed by Dad's panicked shouts. As he charged through the room searching for the stalker, I sagged against the headboard, pulse still racing. Dad's urgent voice called out from the living room. "The window's wide open, he must have gotten in that way." Dread curdled in my stomach. That monstrous creep had been inside my home, my safe space, violated it. Even with the stalker gone, I could never feel at ease here again. Dad took me back to his house that night, insisting I stay with him until we got a restraining order. As I drifted into uneasy sleep, one thought looped endlessly through my mind. This was far from over. Kevin's twisted obsession had already escalated from texts to breaking and entering, and I had no idea just how far he would go to make me his. But I refused to be a victim any longer. Tomorrow I would take back my power. I would stand up to my stalker in court and put him behind bars where he belonged. Justice would be served, and I would never have to fear this psycho again. When the day came, I marched into the courtroom with my head held high, my family's love buoying me. Kevin slouched at the defendant's table, a sheen of madness in his eyes as he smirked in my direction. My hands trembled as I took the stand, spine stiffening when the judge asked me to describe the stalking. Kevin's arrogant expression faded as I recounted every obsessive text, threatening message, and petrifying home invasion. By the time I finished, his face was mottled with rage. But it didn't matter. The judge had heard enough. With a stern glare at my unrepentant stalker, she granted a permanent restraining order. If Kevin ever contacted me again, he would go straight to jail. Leaving the courtroom, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding for months. It was really over. Kevin could no longer terrorize my life with his demented obsession. Justice had prevailed, and I could walk into the future without fear. The next holiday season was the most joyful one yet. Gathered around the table, glowing with love and warmth, my eyes met my family's. Their strength and support had gotten me through the darkest time. Thanks to them, my stalker's shadow no longer loomed, and I was free to embrace life again. This was what the holidays were really about. Not lavish meals or gifts, but the people you shared them with. I had everything I needed right here. Crisp autumn air nipped at my cheeks as I stepped out of the car and gazed across the still waters of Lake Whisper. The setting sun burned the glassy surface with liquid fire, wisps of mist curling off the shoreline like ghostly fingers. In the distance, my uncle's lake house beckoned, windows aglow with warm light. I hauled my overnight bag up the creaking steps as the screen door banged open. "There's my favorite niece," Uncle Ben boomed, wrapping me in a crushing bear hug that smelled of beer and wood smoke. "I'm your only niece, Uncle Ben," I laughed, returning the hug. The rest of the family was already gathered inside the cozy cabin. Cousins and aunts packed around the crackling fireplace as a football game blared on the TV. My rambunctious uncle lived for these chaotic holiday gatherings, when his remote retreat filled with food, fun, and just a hint of danger. As afternoon darkened into dusk, we feasted on heaping plates of turkey, dressing, and Aunt Mel's famous sweet potato casserole. When the last pie had disappeared, Uncle Ben fired up his boombox, flooding the night with twangy country tunes. "All right, y'all, time for some cornhole," he hollered, lining up a set of boards off the patio. My cousins and I happily obliged, beers in hand. Laughter and playful taunts rang out over the peaceful lake. But as I bent to scoop up a stray bean bag, movement at the tree line caught my eye. I paused, squinting into the shadows. Had I imagined it? No. There. A tall figure lingering between the skeletal oaks, perfectly still. Unease trickled down my spine. "Uncle Ben?" I called hesitantly. "There's someone in the woods." His head swiveled around, eyes narrowing. With a grunt, he stormed toward the trees, fists clenched. "Hey, here's private property." The shadowy figure bolted, vanishing into the darkness with a crunch of leaves. Uncle Ben spat on the ground. "Damn hooligans. Probably just some teenage prank." He trumped back, muttering under his breath. Though he brushed it off, a faint chill remained coiled in my gut. Why would a bored teen be skulking around the woods on Thanksgiving night? Something about this didn't feel right. I tried to ignore the lingering dread as we returned to our games, but it wasn't long before a flicker of movement drew my gaze back to the tree line. Another figure, taller than the last, lurked deeper in the shadows. "There's someone else out there," I warned. My uncle's face darkened. "Not in my goddamn woods, they ain't." He charged toward the figure, bottle dangling from one meaty fist. But as he neared the trees, the shape melted backward into the night. At the same moment, I spotted a third interloper across the yard, half hidden behind a boat trailer. My pulse quickened. This was no teenage prank. We were being watched, toyed with. Uncle Ben tromped back up the steps, sweat beading on his brow. "Everyone inside now!" he barked. Wide-eyed, we hastily gathered the food and darted into the house. Uncle Ben slammed the door behind us, twisting the deadbolt with a shaky hand. "What do they want with us?" my aunt whispered, clutching her rosary beads. No one had an answer. Uncle Ben sank into his recliner, staring broodingly into his beer as if it could provide solutions. The rest of us huddled on the sofa, ears straining for any sound from outside. The night pressed heavy on the windows. Eventually, I rose to grab another round of drinks, hoping to diffuse the tension. As I crossed the patio, the shadows seemed to coil and stretch around me. I hurried to the cooler, skin prickling. On my way back to the door, a sudden screech tore through the silence, the harsh scrape of metal on concrete. I whirled, searching the darkness. "Who's there?" No reply, just the gleam of moonlight on the empty chairs. An icy sensation trickled down my neck. I bolted for the house, nearly crashing into Uncle Ben as he came to investigate the noise. "Someone's messing with the furniture," I gasped, pointing toward the shrouded gazebo. His eyes narrowed to slits. After securing the door, Uncle Ben began a methodical sweep of the house, checking every window and latch. Satisfied that we were locked down, he switched off the exterior lights. "No point advertising our location," he muttered darkly. Aunt Mel bit her lip, hugging herself as she peered out at the now blackened windows. The night felt like a living thing, heavy with menace. Time crawled by at a snail's pace. Sleep was out of the question while phantom intruders lurked outside. We sat rigid in the living room, ears straining, barely breathing. A loud thump shattered the uneasy calm. I shrieked as a jagged hole materialized in the kitchen window, sending shards of glass across the floor. A brick lay among the ruin, a scrap of paper secured to it with fraying twine. Hands shaking, Aunt Mel retrieved the note and read the chilling message aloud: "Leave now or else." The blood drained from Uncle Ben's face. Before he could react, a high-pitched siren split the silence. Red and blue lights flashed outside. "Police!" he rasped in disbelief. But how? In all his years out here, he'd never once called the cops for help. But tonight, he had no choice. As the officers searched the property, Uncle Ben discovered his Trump flag missing from the garage, the pole snapped clean in half. "Looks like we've got some anti-Trump vandals on our hands," the sheriff remarked, jotting in his notebook. Though the trespassers were long gone, none of us slept that night. The next morning, Uncle Ben installed motion sensor floodlights and security cameras around the property. But it would take more than lights to dispel the shadows that had invaded our refuge. Our family's once peaceful retreat had been stained by menace. In the years since that frightening holiday, a question still lingers in my mind every Thanksgiving. Were the intruders simply bored teenagers looking to cause some trouble? Political agitators bent on making a statement? Or something far more sinister than either? Out there in the remote Florida darkness, anything is possible. All I know is that evil comes in many forms, and it knows no season. Even on what should be the most thankful of nights, darkness can creep in when you least expect it.